Hello, 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 hello. Perfect. This should be recording now. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
How's everybody doing?
Hello.
Good. How's everyone doing?
Thank you all for joining. This is awesome that so many people were able to make it today for this quick chat. I don't want to take too much of your time because there's a lot of people here, obviously. But what I wanted to do today is just run you through what this experiment that we're running will entail. Make sure that everybody's bought into the process. And in the description of the invite, I put a little bit of the agenda. So how are we setting up the experiment? Why are we setting up this way? How are we going to track the data? And how are we going to kind of like rate evaluate some of the different tools and vendors? And then open it up for Q&A and questions or anything else you guys want to talk about. I'm also recording this talk, so anything, just be conscious about that. I want to post it online later on for any other vendor that might want to join like last minute or be interested in being part of the experiment, and also for the transparency of just the process for anybody else who's requesting the information. Obviously, you guys might have seen the post that I put out there. Got 350 comments of people wanting to run this experiment, and then like tons of likes. So we're gonna share it widely. Hopefully everybody's good with that.
Is it possible to get the recording after this call?
Yeah, happy to send it over.
Awesome. Thanks.
I'll probably upload it to YouTube later on. At the beginning, it will be unlisted. Later on, I might make it public, and I'll write a blog post about the experiment. So yeah, should be a fun one. Cool. So before we start, here is, let me grab maybe that directly here. Here's the way we're thinking about it and the way we're running this first experiment. This experiment is going to be only about contact information for different companies. So we know that different people are going to have different processes. This experiment could become bigger later on, include international companies. It could include all sorts of different like companies and industries and verticals and so on. But for the first one, I'm using a company where I have a lot of leverage. I'm an angel investor in this company called Marpipe, and they target marketing personas, and more specifically marketing personas that are running ads on Facebook. So what we have done is individually, just to make sure that the companies we're trying to reach out to have at least the right personas within their account, we went on everyone's Facebook pages, and we found that they're running at least 5 Facebook ads at the point that we're researching them. We're putting together a list of 300 companies that we have found to be qualified. And what we're going to do with that is separate, like research all the profiles on LinkedIn initially, by which we're going to extract about 1,500 to 2,000 different people. Out of those 2,000 people that we extract from LinkedIn, we're going to divide them into different buckets, and we're going to use different vendors in order to search them. To make the process fair, we're only giving, I think, a maximum of 6 individuals per company into this into the experiment is the maximum we're going to add. And I think the max you can get from each company is 2 people. The reason we're doing that is we know that certain companies have a harder time finding emails, others have an easier time. Some companies might have more direct dials or less direct dials, or some directories might be easier to navigate versus others. So we want to spread the data across different vendors so that no single vendor has too many leads from one company. That is kind of like the basics of the setup of the experiment. And then I want to show you guys the process here. I'm going to share my screen just so we can run you through it. You can see we have some of the vendors down here. But again, we're going to select 330 companies rated A. We're going to export 1,300 or so leads, maybe more. We're going to clean the titles and sort by company. So sometimes we get bad titles on LinkedIn. We're going to limit to 6 per company. We're going to divide it. We're going to randomize it. We're going to allow you guys to only search 1 or 2. We're going to give you 250 leads per tool. And then when uploading these into Outreach, we're going to tag them with the appropriate tool that it was researched. We're only going to research net new leads. So none of these leads have any previous information. And then we're going to use Outreach to determine both connect rates on the phone, as well as number of emails delivered versus bounce rate. And eventually, we can also, when the experiment ends, we can easily see how many meetings were we able to book. What we're considering a connect is not somebody picking up the phone, but the right person picking up the phone. So we have created custom processes in Outreach where very specifically we can tag certain phone dispositions as a connect. So we're not using the regular Outreach kind of like answered, unanswered. But I can I show this while we record? Yes, I can show this while we record. That's fine. I think just for transparency, so usually Outreach has their way to measure answered, unanswered. But for us, we're going to measure it in a different way. So we're grabbing all these dispositions and then using our own mathematical kind of like, we're exporting the data via the API, figuring out how many are going to voicemail, how many are quick conversations, longer conversations, which ones are getting rejected, how many demos we book and all that. So we have a specific triggers that are tagging all that. Cool. I think that's a lot of info like so far. I'll stop there for anybody having like questions or thoughts on the experiment. I'm happy to explain why we set it up this way or whatever else. And I want to make sure that everybody's bought into the process being fair as well.
Hey, Tito, this is Tyson over at ZoomInfo. I had a question. So one thing that we come across a lot with direct dials is, a measure of accuracy of the data is if it goes to their desk, not necessarily if they answer. I know calling time throughout the day has a variable, or is a big variable in that. Are you guys doing anything to identify, like, if the voicemail matches the person's contact name, is that like a positive or a negative, or is that kind of neutral?
We can do that. That's a smart idea. We're going to call each lead at least 5 times. Those might be variable. We're going to have 4 SDRs using this data for the leads. So we should, with enough volume, I would imagine that the, variability of somebody not connecting and then the phone going to their desk or their cell phone or whatever else versus just calling a regular kind of like company directory will show itself in the results of the connect rate. But what we can do too, what I was showing, is we can make it mandatory to leave a voicemail for people when we get at least to their voicemail, and then I can tag how many leads per company ended up at least getting to a voicemail number each time. So I like that suggestion.
Thank you.
Yep. We know which vendors get us more direct dials versus company dials. Cool. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments or ideas on running the experiment?
Hey, Tito, this is Brian from ZoomInfo. Quick question. Could you just talk a little bit more about number 8? If I'm understanding this correctly, if you've already have some of these data sources on this call in your outreach, are you saying that basically they will not be counted because of any interference with name recognition? Or, yeah, can you explain number 8 just a little bit more?
Correct. So right now we're running a fairly complex process. We're clients of a few of you who are in the call today. So we might go into ZoomInfo first, grab some data, then go into Lead IQ, grab all their data, go into Lucia, grab all their data. And what we've realized over the past few months or so is our connect rate might be at a certain percentage, whatever, 4, 5, 6, 7, depending how many times you call each lead, connect rate starts dropping, whatever else. But what we are unable to recognize right now, and the reason of this experiment is, hey, who has the best connect rate? and then which data sources are more complementary versus just the same. So number 8 here says, if we have, what we're doing, let me show you here if I got it. This is what we're doing. I believe, yep, here's our experiment. So we have recognized all these companies, and we're continuing to research a couple more. We're up to 145 as being running Facebook ads. And these are net new companies. We haven't researched these before in the past. And that's important because if I were to upload a lead into Outreach that we had already uploaded before, we could have old stale data from somebody else, and then when we're tagging the company like, hey, ZoomInfo gave us this data, but that profile was already created in Outreach and we had old data, it could compromise results or whatever. So we're making sure that all the leads we're uploading are net new. Does that clarify, kind of like answer your question on why and how we're thinking about it?
Yeah, that was great. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hi there, Hector from Cognizant. So other than connect rate and deliverability of emails, is one of the other criteria number of meetings booked per the people that you're aiming to connect with of these 250 leads?
Somewhat, but not very important. We are going to see email delivery, and then we're going to see the response rate as different metrics. Obviously, like if we're getting Gmails versus company emails and things like that, we rather not use any like personal emails. So that's going to be a factor. The reason why we're not using meetings booked as a primary factor of the consideration is because it might depend a little bit on the skill of the rep, or it might have to do with like a company having an initiative or things like that, things that we can't control. So in the future, I might run another experiment with vendors to find companies. Like, should we reach out to intent versus non-intent companies, right? Or like, let's source companies from Bombora, from Mintigo, and then from Everstring, and then from just our random search. The only thing we're making sure in this experiment is these 330 companies have been, in the past couple of weeks from the experiment beginning, they will have been human verified to have been running 5 Facebook ads. So that means that somebody in that company, when we call them, they are running ads. And that also means that somebody in that company has that responsibility. Maybe they don't manage the ads directly, but they manage the agency, or they manage it. Like somebody in that company is looking at these Facebook ads. So that's what was important for us in making sure that the companies are the right companies and that profiles do exist at these companies that will be good. And we're gonna put the effort into searching what these people are. So what we're not verifying you guys on, for example, is I've had data vendors where I go and I say, hey, give me leads for Coca-Cola, and then 100 leads pop out. I try to call all those leads, and then maybe 20 people have left the company already, right? So for this will be all fair. Every profile that we're gonna pass over to you guys is gonna be LinkedIn verified. And the other thing we want to do is control the research process. So we're already, again, customers with some of the tools that we're using here today. So we can go into ZoomInfo, we can go into Lucia, we can go into LeadIQ and find that data. But for the other vendors, we would like access to their platform just to make sure that there's like 100% transparency and there's no like, oh, we send you a list and you like enrich it with your data on like even more premium data, or you do like, you do any workarounds or anything like that. So we really want to control the flow of the process. And we won't necessarily even tell you like what profiles we're searching. We'll do it on our own, just so like nobody is improving the data for certain profiles or whatever else in advance. And you don't even know what companies. I know I kind of like flashed the companies, but you won't even know which one of those companies will be assigned to what tool or how the leads are going to be distributed. So we're really trying to make sure nobody has any like advantage in any way. And we're starting with 250 leads per tool. After that, we're going to stop. We're going to do a count of what's the connect rate across these tools, what is the email deliverability, what's the email response rate, and then if companies are really close, we're going to continue running the experiment. We're going to grab another 250 leads. We're going to do it again. We're going to grab another 200 leads until we find statistical significance. Now, let's say as an example, tool number 1, 250 leads, 5 calls per lead, connect rate 8%. Tool number 2, connect rate 1%. I don't need to run that further. Like, that's ridiculous. That'd be way too big, right? But if one is at 4.8, the other one's at 4.7, okay, that could be just randomness. So we're starting with 250. We're happy to continue. And if somebody says like, hey, I just lost very little, can we run another one? We can do it. My other preference too is we have had, many of you who are here, and especially those for whom I'm a client, you guys seem to be the most reliable, well-recognized, like best vendors. I've had another like 30 companies send me emails. I have data. Can I sell you data? What we're going to do with other companies that are not partaking the first part of the experiment is later on, once we found all the data, we're just going to grab a list of like 500 leads. We're going to send 500 leads to all these vendors. I'm going to put side by side what data do they have in their databases. I can't give 250 leads per tool for 100 tools. It's just too much data, or for even 20 tools, it's too much data. So we're going to compare them just on a spreadsheet, left to right, who has what data, and then we're going to check whoever has best data. We might add 1 or 2 other companies to the experiment, but we don't want to run this with more than like 6 companies to start with, because that would be the 1,500 leads or so that we're going to find, which we think is a fair number of people. And then the time that's going to take us to run the experiment might be 2 to 3 months, right? It's 5 calls per lead. We have 1,500 leads, 7,500 calls. We're not using auto dialers or anything like that. It's all click to dial on outreach, very controlled process, and so on. So yeah, I don't know, 1,500 leads, 7,500 calls at 100 calls per day would be, what is that, 75 days? We have 4 reps, so perfect. It's 20 days. It's 20 work days. It will at least take a month before we stop, revisit, and rethink about it.
Tito, so quick question. So you're not using this for the same company and the leads within the same company? You are not actually comparing between the different vendors? Or you are actually assigning different company to different vendors, or you are comparing?
We will not assign more than 2 leads from one same company to the same vendor. I might grab Coca-Cola. We get 8 leads. I think we're limiting to 6. We might do 8. 8 leads for Coca-Cola. We're gonna grab 2 leads of Coca-Cola to LeadIQ, 2 leads to ZoomInfo, 2 leads to Lucia, 2 leads to Sales Intel, whatever, so that it's more distributed.
And the leads may be the same people, or will be different people? Are you making sure? I see. What if like basically you are making sure it's unique? What if like it's the same leads that they are coming back from the vendors?
It's going to be unique because the process works as follows. We're going to find the companies, extract the leads, and then divide the leads. So before I even give you leads, I will have my master leads of, here are the 1,500 leads we're going to run the experiment with. Then I give you 2 to LeadIQ, 2 to you, 2 to you.
I see. Interesting. Okay. Why not do the between all the 6 leads and then just see all the vendors? What's the coverage between all the 6 leads, and then compare it that way? I was just curious on your thought process there.
Yeah, because one of the things we want to do is identify. That would be an easy experiment, right? Let's put all the vendors. Let me pass the same 500 leads to everybody and put them on a sheet. The problem is, some vendors might be guessing emails, right? So what if you tell me that, let's say we're trying to reach out Mark Roberge from HubSpot, right? So you might say it's Mark.Roberge, while somebody else says is Mark R at HubSpot. It's hard for me to just at a glance know which one has the accurate data. The same thing happens with phone numbers. You might give me a phone number, somebody else a different phone number, a different phone number. If we have the same person, when I upload the data into Outreach, unfortunately, I can't tag who gave me the data
Oh,
in outreach.
I see.
And then when it
I
connects,
right.
I can't tag what number it connected to easily and export it via the API. If I could tag the phone number and what email worked super easily, maybe that's a slightly easier experiment to run. But then the other problem is, what if we call Mark Roberge on dial 1, it connects. Okay, that data came from ZoomInfo. LeadIQ gave me a different number. I just booked a
But
meeting.
it's a,
Do I call him back? Like,
got
that's
it.
so hard,
Right.
right? So that's why the experiment is built this way. So everybody has a fair chance.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, I've thought a lot about this. So
Yeah.
fire
Yeah.
away. More questions. Happy to take them.
It's Christian from User.
Hey, Tito. Mel here from LeadIQ. I have a question. Well, actually two. So you mentioned that you would attempt 5 phone calls for phone numbers in order to try to get a connect. And the determination of a good number is that you get the right person. So what happens if you try to call a number 5 times and nobody picks up?
Correct. That will be just marked as a not connect. And when I say 5 times, here's what we're going to do. We have a sequence that has 5 steps that are phone based. And then we have, I think, another 5 that are email based. So we will attempt a phone call first, just to see if we get a phone connect. If that doesn't work, we're going to send an email. If the email doesn't bounce, they'll get thrown into another phone step. Every time we have a phone step, we're going to attempt every phone number that you have given us. So if you have given us a cell phone number, a direct line to their desk, and another corporate number, we will each time on outreach, let me see if I can show this. So when you're dialing, I don't know who is super familiar with outreach versus who's not. So let me just run this. If I start my, give me a second, I need to go to call tasks. If I just look at call tasks and I start running this, as you can see, the reps will also mark what numbers are valid or invalid. So we will, in this case, always start dialing mobile numbers first. If the mobile number goes to their voicemail or something like that, and we know this number is getting to the right person, we'll mark it valid. Unfortunately, I can't use this data out of the API. Outreach does not let me export and understand if this was marked valid or invalid. So it would be a really tough manual process to go through 1,500 contacts and count the number valid or invalid. So what we're going to do is just trying to connect. If we mark it invalid, the second time we're not going to call him. But if this phone doesn't connect on the first go, we're always trying to call the second phone number. And as you can see here, very obvious that this is corporate and this is probably not a mobile, but probably a desk phone direct.
Okay. And so I'm assuming that if the email bounces, would you then assume that the phone number is wrong?
We will not assume the phone number is wrong, but you will lose that lead. And the reason you will lose that lead is if the email is wrong, usually cadences will fail very early in the process. So we're just taking you through our regular process of reaching out to somebody. So yeah, the email being accurate is of high importance for us to be able to attempt all the calls. The only thing that might save you is the first call task happens before the first email task. And what that will mean is that we call before we email, and therefore we will call everybody at least once. If that direct dial connects, then we know we have a direct dial. Now, if the email bounces on step number 2, what outreach does is they will automatically take them out of your sequence. So it is of high importance to get the email right in order for us to attempt it as many times as we would need for us to run the process. And this is the same process we run internally. Like, this is not part of the experiment. This wasn't like created with the purpose of the experiment. As a company, what we do is we always make a dial first, then email. And as you can imagine, whatever vendor we end up working with in the future, or what we recommend to our clients, and when we do consulting jobs and whatever else, is to run that sequence. And obviously, if the email bounces, there are options to, hey, let's create a sequence of only calls later on, but it is a much tougher time-consuming
Mhm.
process. So
Mm-hmm.
But
And so,
sorry, did you just say that if you try calling a number and it doesn't connect, or it's the wrong direct dial for whatever reason, you instantly lose that lead? The email doesn't go through any form of test either.
no, that it's the opposite. So we will call every lead once. We'll call all the numbers. Even if all the numbers are wrong, it will go to step number 2 and it will trigger an email.
Okay.
Right?
Cool. Thanks.
Now, the only time you lose a lead is when outreach takes it out of the sequence because it has failed. So if the email bounces, it will tell us, you can't put this guy in sequence. Like all the future emails will fail. Don't email them anymore. And there's no way to like skip all the emails and just make like only run call test. Nice feature request for outreach if they end up watching this. If an email bounces, just let it run the call tasks.
so what happens when all the emails go through? So the emails don't bounce, but the person also doesn't answer the phone. How would you evaluate that data point?
Yeah, so we're evaluating on 2 criteria. One is email data, the other one is phone data. So that will tell me your email has gone through or it hasn't bounced. So you're getting a deliverability point. And then if they open, you're also getting hey, this went to inbox versus spam or whatever else. So we're going to compare everybody on delivery, open, and reply. And then on phone, we're only going to count you guys on connects. And a connect is the right person has picked up the phone. And then as a suggestion, which came from ZoomInfo, which I like, is because we can tag voicemails, we can also know, even if they don't connect, as a secondary measure, if 2 vendors have the same connect rate or very close connect rate, well, this one has more voicemails because they have more direct dials. Maybe that's a better vendor to work with. I would agree with that. Voicemails are of some sort of value. Obviously, nothing close to being a connect, but it will give you a small edge.
The voicemail is an identification that number is valid, but it's not based on your initial evaluation that is connecting to the right person. So it's sort of like a secondary
Correct.
Point, right? Okay.
And we will mark it valid and continue to call that number 5 times, right? So in the 5 call steps over the next couple of weeks that we're running that lead through the sequence, it will be that same number which has gone to voicemail will be called 5 times. If it goes all 5 times to voicemail, nobody ever picks up, bad luck. It's not a connect, but at least it's a voicemail.
And how do you define statistical significance? Because you said that if it was a delta of 1%, you would reevaluate. So what's the upper and lower limits? And when would you decide that you would need to stop testing between 2 or 3 vendors when the delta is very narrow?
Yeah, exactly. We can get super scientific about it. I don't yet have like that super well defined because I think we're gonna see fairly strong gaps in between. But luckily, we have a head of data analytics here in the company who can help us determine that. So if you guys want to get super scientific about it, I am 100% in for that. And we'll be able to export all the data from outreach, know all the connects, know all the email deliverability, whatever. And I can publish the raw data results and somebody else can go ahead and run statistical significance. If the vendors are up for trying a little bit more, like 250 leads per company, usually people are open to testing. I know some of you even have trials for 100 leads or whatever else. But if I say, hey, X and Y vendor are really close, we need another 500 leads each, we're just going to run a final round between you two. If I'm not a client of one, I hope you guys won't be like, no. Hopefully the value of the experiment and the 300 something people that are waiting to see the results would be valuable. And I'm happy, whoever wins this experiment, I'm also happy to be an advocate. You might have seen me on LinkedIn. I don't have a partnership with Outreach or whatever. I just love them. These guys are great. I love their tool. I advocate for them all the time. I send clients their way. So whichever data vendor wins, I'm also happy to be a referral. I don't want a penny from any of you for being your advocate. I just want to make sure I'm advocating whoever's best.
We'll send you a box of donuts if you like donuts. One last question, just to be really annoying, sorry. You said to me that so some vendors are guessing emails as you're pulling them out, and it's hard to tell that the data is accurate. You can't tag who gave you the data in outreach. Can you explain that a bit to me? Maybe I didn't understand that correctly. So it's like there's not enough control in that particular method.
That's not going to be a problem, because what I was explaining to May is the reason we don't just ask the same lead across all 5 companies. If I say Mark Roberge of HubSpot across all 5 companies, and you all give me different phone numbers and different emails for Mark Roberge, if I upload that lead, I can't tag which vendor gave me what lead within Outreach or whatever else. It's really hard to do, and things like that. So what we have determined to do is we're going to give completely different leads to every person. I'm going to max it at 2 leads per company per person. So you will not get more than 2 people from, let's say, HubSpot, or 2 people from Zillow, or 2 people from Coca-Cola per vendor. But those will be split across vendors. So we might get a total of 8 leads, each vendor giving us 2. And the main reason for that is, let's say Coca-Cola is a company that's impossible to get through. You call their company directory, and there's no way to get to anybody. That happens with companies like Facebook. I've tried prospecting Facebook. It's impossible. You need either a direct dial or nothing. Well, other companies you call, it says press the first 3 letters of the name, and you get connected all the time. So the reason I want to distribute it is I want to eliminate luck playing a role, meaning somebody gets Facebook, they have a disadvantage. Somebody gets a really easy dial by name directory, they have an advantage in connect rate. So that should make it more even and more fair.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. I appreciate you explaining that.
Yep. Anybody else? Any other questions, suggestions, ideas?
Yeah. Hey Tito, on the contacts you're pulling. So if you take 2 from Coca-Cola from each vendor, are you doing anything to rate, title, like VPs versus directors versus managers? Like if one company has more direct dials or more verified email addresses for VPs, wouldn't that be a strong indicator over, managers or individual contributors who, jobs more frequently?
So let me show you. I like this of VPs are equal across vendors. Let me show you a little bit of how we run this. I'm going to show you a different company, but this is a little bit how we run our experiment. So I might say, different client of ours, but I might say, okay, we have verified the 330 companies to be okay. Now, the people we're going to reach out to have these titles in common, right? And this is a Boolean search where we're saying anybody who has the title energy, environment, and blah, blah, blah is good, while everybody who has any of these other titles is bad, and whatever else. And we also have seniority. So in this campaign, it's only senior and above, right? So we do senior manager, director, VP, and C level. While in the case of Marpipe, I think we're going to go manager and above, but I can make sure that the number of VPs and directors are equal across vendors. And because those are easily tagged in some of our data sheets, we have them tagged by seniority. I can check if you want to run that later on. That could be a tie break, right? Like if 2 vendors are really close, who connected me with more VPs rather than managers? We're never calling individual contributors.
And on the initial data pool of VPs.
On the initial data pool, we're only extract people from LinkedIn that have a manager title or above.
Thank you.
Cool. Anybody else? We have another like 10 minutes or so. I know that.
Yeah, Tito, Matt, Sales Intel. A question on the pulling leads from the LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Is there any way to confirm, that that's accurate? I mean, typically they are accurate, but there are times where you come across an account where somebody's still currently a CEO at a company and they're not there anymore. So is there kind of a fail safe for that, or could you help me understand that process?
Yeah, that's a very difficult to control stat. From my experience working with a few different vendors, their internal data versus what's on LinkedIn, LinkedIn tends to be more accurate on who's left and who's staying there. It also happens that the marketing persona we're reaching out to tends to be fairly good at updating their LinkedIn, like when they leave or when they go new places. So I don't think that we have a way. So it will play a little bit of luck on leads that haven't left. But yeah.
Okay, no,
It,
yeah, I understand that completely. And then for vendors that you currently don't work with yet, and you'll be pulling the data yourself from our platform. Is there a way to do like a quick onboarding, or for like the SDR, like is there a way to help them with that? Just if they're not in it every day or playing around with it, just want to make sure that it's an even playing field.
Yeah, let me write this down. I like that suggestion. So for all the leads that the emails bounce, what I'm going to do is we're going to go back into LinkedIn and make sure the profile is active. What I mean is I've seen leads where like they have 3 connections and they're listed as the CEO of Coca-Cola for the past 27 years. Okay, if that lead bounced, fair enough, not your fault. That's probably a bad LinkedIn profile. So I can check back on that and I'll eliminate those leads from your results and then we'll give you a new lead. Regarding the platform onboarding, I do like that. We're going to be working with one of our heads of data operations, Valeria, who's going to join, who's going to be part of this process. So any vendor who wants to give us a quick onboarding, you can talk to me and her. We can go in there and validate the data, or yeah, make sure that that we know how to use a platform, whatever else, we know how to extract the data. So happy to do that.
Okay, awesome. No, I appreciate that. And then I guess, in the same kind of sense for vendors that you don't currently work with, if, the results prove that, they're either up there with current vendors or going above, is there any, essentially, bringing the business into your company? Or
Oh,
bringing the data?
100%. 100%. I'm buying it. You also have leverage because after running this experiment, I already spend I don't know, 40, 50, 60 grand. I don't even know at this point. And that's only on like tools plus like the time it takes us to research and clean up and things like that. And this is only for contact level data. I also have like company level providers that enrich data. I spend another 50 to 60 grand there. So I throw a lot of money at this personally, and my business is growing. So more than happy to sign up, and I'll refer you about 350 heads of sales development who have commented on that LinkedIn post. So I'll write a post about it. I'm happy to do a case study. Like, if you win, you have me. So,
Tito, one question I did have is this test is very US centric, and I'm sure everyone would agree across every vendor or provider that there are core competencies in particular markets or countries like EMEA, APAC, Oceania, wherever that may be. In the case of this, because it's so US centric, does that mean that the idea is that we'll apply the same logic across the rest of our data sets, or are there going to be more tests across different regions and countries for things like coverage as well as richness of said coverage of data?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So at the moment, for us and our clients, the majority of them are really focusing on US. So that's where the experiment is being run at the moment. We have a few clients that target some other international locations, especially English speaking. So we're not going to go to like Russia or whatever other, countries that other companies might be prospecting into in different markets. I'm more than happy to run other experiments, and if there are other companies that want to volunteer their leads, what I mean is like another AltiSales, right? If whatever segment as a company says, I want to run a data experiment with our data because we're going after APAC, I'm happy to meet with them, show them exactly how I've run this process, give them my tools, and run that with them. And then also I have a high interest in figuring out who has the best data for APAC and for Europe and whatever else. Because as my business grows, I'm gonna wanna buy those vendors for those markets. So I see high value in that. I don't have an immediate plan to test much outside the US. Up to 5% of our leads might be outside the US actually. So we might have a few UK and a few Australia. As long as these companies are active in the US and they're running Facebook ads in the US, it could be that they director of marketing for the company that's running US ads is in UK, we will pass that lead over to you in the, as part of this experiment. Just a couple more minutes here for last minute questions.
One last question, Tito, is how are you sending to outreach? Are you going to be uploading it, or are you going to use the vendor's integrations?
No, CSV upload.
So everything will be uploaded via CSV?
Correct. So to make the process really fair, we're going to go into each vendor. We're going to either export the data if you have an easy way to export, or we're going to go into your platform, just copy paste data into a CSV file. Make sure that all the columns are well aligned, that there's no mistakes in syncing of the data, that every data point you're giving us is well organized and is well put together. I can show you a little bit of what this looks like. Actually, I don't want to do that because I would be exposing data that I don't feel fair for the leads that I have researched to have their data exposed in this video, given that it's going to be posted online. But yeah, it's just going to be Excel sheet. So company name, which is going to be cleaned up, person, first name, last name, title, location, email. We're going to have a corporate phone, direct line 1, direct line 2. And we're going to limit to 2 direct lines too. That's another thing to mention. I know some vendors give you like, find this lead, and I've had one that outputs like 17 different phone numbers. No, give me your best 3. Because one, I don't want my SDR to be spending 45 minutes calling 17 numbers, figuring out which one works, right? So that will not increase your connect rate. So you're limited to 3 phone numbers at the most. 1 corporate and 2 directs is what we recommend. If you have 3 directs and that's what you want to test, that's fine too.
Hey Tito, on the last suggestion, just thinking about like the inverse. So if you export something out of Salesforce and it is one of those bad CEO profiles, and we don't match against it, that would basically come across not as a match, but that could be something that we've cleaned out of our database. Are you taking that in consideration at all?
So if we try to search the lead in ZoomInfo, we don't find it, and it's because you guys have already determined that person has already left. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
That's interesting scenario. So what I can do is, let me write this down here. After we search all leads for each vendor, can we, I don't know if we want to ping you and say, hey, we didn't find the data for this one, what happened? Because I don't want you guys to have that competitive advantage of being able to now go and find the data through some other source, right? I don't even want to tell you guys which leads are going to be given to you, because I don't think any of you does this, but I've worked with really crappy vendors many years ago where they're like, oh, we have great data. I'm like, send me a sample. And they send me 30 leads, and the 30 leads are excellent. So I go buy 20,000, and out of the 20,000, 30 are excellent, and 19,970 are shit leads. So that's why I don't want to have anybody know what leads we're going to be researching. We're selecting the leads. We're selecting the companies. We're just verifying, how good you guys are. So I don't think I'll be able to ping you and ask, why didn't you find this profile?
Tito, I think Tyson's saying more, it's like the speed to update as a accuracy metric for the data, right? So if someone's left the company 35 days ago and that's the reason why it didn't match from a LinkedIn profile, is there any way to compile that in, wow, this database is refreshing at faster rates than the others?
Refreshing at a faster rate than the others. That's an interesting thought. I don't know how I could easily measure that other than in people who have left and before LinkedIn, which would be shocking and awesome. But I would need to wait another 3 months, and then how do I know that the fact that you're saying they left is actually true rather than not true, right? So I'd have to wait 60 days, go back to the LinkedIn and see, have they changed their job since we were unable to find that lead 2 months ago? So that sounds complex. I don't think that'll be a big measure of the effectiveness. But if you have ideas and you want to send me an email more about that, I can put this as part of the experiment and discuss with my team.
No, I get what you're saying. The complexity. All good. Thanks, Tito.
Yep, appreciate it. I think that's my time. I have another meeting in 5 minutes that I have to prep for. So unless anybody else has anything urgent, we can just end it here. And any questions that might come up in the next couple of days, feel free to email me. I'll grab this recording and post it on YouTube and send the link to everybody who was on the calendar invite as well.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Tito.
Thank you all. You're awesome. I'm super excited.